Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Alison Omens, Managing Director of Programs and Strategic Engagement at JUST Capital.
Good afternoon. My organization, JUST Capital, believes that businesses can and must be part of solving the world's largest problems. We measure, rank, and analyze the largest publicly traded companies headquartered in the United States. And we measure these companies according to the values of the American people. We've done extensive survey research, speaking to over 81,000 people in the last 4 years, and we consistently hear the same thing about what people's values are, and that is that companies should be prioritizing workers above all else. Within that, opportunities for career advancement, commitment to non-discrimination, and pay, among the most important things that people care about is what kinds of benefits people are experiencing and being provided by the companies. Access to healthcare, certainly, but paid time off, and in particular, paid family leave being one of the issues that emerge. In addition to polling and surveying the American people, we extensively look at the business case for this kinds of behavior. Is there a connection to investing in your workforce and business outcomes? And increasingly, looking at paid family leave, there is a business case and extensive research on the topic. Yet still, there's a lack of data on what's actually happening within companies on these issues. It's hard to know what choices are being made within companies and then what outcomes we're actually experiencing. And that's why I'm excited to introduce the work of Panorama today. This summer, they launched a paid leave pledge to look at and understand and work with leading companies on what choices they have made around implementing paid family leave, and then understanding and working with creating benchmarks and understanding private data, not just what choices are being made, but looking at issues like employee retention, productivity, turnover rates, and health outcomes. So this morning, or this afternoon rather, I'm excited to introduce our panel to hear the state of that project and what their expectations are for the future in working with companies on understanding paid leave policies. So I'd like to introduce Kimble Snyder, who's the director of Panorama and leading this effort, Norma Cueller, who's the Director of Nutrition at Nestle, and Simon Isaacs, who's the co-founder and Chief Content Officer at Fatherly for this conversation.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Allison, and thank you to everyone for being here and to our guests. It's really great to sit up here with Norma and Simon today. Norma, we heard Allison talk a bit about this trend towards the American public wanting companies to support businesses, their workers in certain ways, specifically around paid leave. And we also know, in addition to that trend, that only 14% of American workers have access to paid family and medical leave. So there's obviously a really big gap that exists between those two. So can you tell us a little bit about Nestle's path to trying to fill that gap, and specifically about the kind of business case piece that you look at around workforce total, but also knowing that you also extend this to your hourly workers as well?
Absolutely. Certainly. At Nestle, it's been a journey. We're in the infancy stage of this. We launched it. We had a global mandate from our Swiss headquarters to provide paid family leave 14 weeks across the board, across the world. And here in the US, and I sit on what we call the governance body of our Employee Benefits Committee, we had the task of coming up with a policy design that met that requirement globally, but also, it was customized for our local workforce here. We have approximately 48,000 employees in the United States across 8 operating companies. And we wanted the policy to be inclusive and flexible, and also to be supported with other programs to help foster that parental leave policy process or a journey that we're undergoing. So we do offer 14 paid weeks with the option to extend for an additional 12 unpaid weeks, and the ability to work part-time during that phased-in return to work process, right? So that's been our journey. Our data has been quite positive. We did have about 547 individuals in 2017 that took advantage of this program. Of those, 45% of the men that took this program were from the hourly workforce. So again, we're trying to be very inclusive. Doesn't matter the location, the gender, or the classification of worker status, whether you're hourly or salary. And so that's been our journey so far. Yeah.
And when you were thinking about implementing this, was there a specific business case for doing so?
Absolutely. Our business case is recruiting and retention. We certainly want to be the employer of choice, you know, and this is the way to attract our employees. We've been listening to our employees. We have focus groups. We hear them, and we try to build policies around what is needed in the changing environment. The landscape is truly changing.
Yeah, yeah. So Simon, at Fatherly, you've talked a lot about men reprioritizing family in new ways that we maybe haven't seen in the past. And you've also done a lot of work with companies who are responding to shifts in perspective. Right. So maybe this being one of them. Can you speak a bit about how you've seen companies responding to working families and their needs?
Yeah, so listen, I think we looked at the family wrong for a very long time. And that's true as employees as it is with consumers, right? For a long time, we looked at the mother as the primary caregiver, the primary shopper, and the dad's kind of there in the background, you know, bringing home the bacon. And that world is not the world that we live in. It's not the world that anybody in this room lives in. And yet we still sort of marketed to them and treated them as such as employees. However, what we now know is, you know, men, particularly for millennial men, have put family at a really high point in their value set. They want to be really engaged fathers, and they're looking for employers who respect that and understand that. They also want their spouses to work at places that also respect that. They know that, you know, employers who have, you know, really great benefits for men and women are also very, you know, gender neutral and gender empowering companies. And so we're seeing people obviously choose this. Over the last 4 years, we've documented the 50 best places to work for new parents, and specifically, you know, for new dads. And, you know, what we've seen in the last 4 years is a doubling of the average number of weeks available, which is incredible. And now what we're seeing is efforts, you know, like Nestle is doing, to bring that beyond sort of the U.S. to make this a global commitment, which is fabulous.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we have companies that are responding to what Americans are asking for, where they're choosing to put their hard-earned dollars, as Alison had mentioned, and then the shifts in parenting that we've been discussing, and also the needs of the changing workforce as it continues to grow and expand. So coming back to this data piece that Nestle is tracking as part of the pledge, and that you've also been using this to kind of figure out what those impacts really are. Can you talk about any more recent takeaways within, this is now your second year that you've been doing this? And then also I'm interested kind of aligning the brand value. So where do you see that Nestle's values show up in that data as well?
Absolutely, and that's why it's so nicely aligned with the work that you're doing here, and why we took the pledge, because it does align with our corporate values, as well as our product lines. You know, we're home for Gerber baby food and infant formulas, and some of the data sets that have come through that is the decrease in infant healthcare costs. I mean, we can't quantify because this is in its infancy, so only second year. We can't really get a trend line just yet, and we hope that we will see that down the road. But it is an investment up front. But we have seen a 12% decrease in mom's anxiety and mental claim with our healthcare plan. So eventually, we're going to start seeing those results that we want to, and also attracting our workforce.
Yeah, definitely. And that sounds like it lines up with what you're seeing as well.
certainly. I mean, for us with Fatherly, we're 0.2% the size of Nestle, so which is laughable, but it's also interesting because for Nestle and others, I think the opportunity is to inspire businesses like ourselves. 86% of the American workforce works in a small business. And so if we're actually going to tackle this at a mass level, we need to be inspired by the work that Nestle and others are doing, and then understand how do we scale that, or how can we work with multinationals and enable that to happen sort of downstream, whether it's with the freelance community that you guys are working with, or throughout your supply chain, or to business partners like Fatherly. And I think there's really special challenges from a policy perspective and a business perspective when you're thinking about what are these policies, what does this look in practice for a company with 50 people. We're very proud to be able to try to create a model where we provide the same level of benefits that Nestle provides, but are able to do that to a company that's very small, because when one person on a team of 5, let's say, we're not 5, but leaves, that's really significant, and that's very difficult to plan against. But that's the challenge that most businesses face, and so the more that we can sort of look to the work that Nestle is doing, the better.
Yeah. And do you see in your readership, as you're working through this and telling these stories, that you're also getting that positive impact both from the general public as well as businesses that you've been working alongside?
Yeah, so paid leave and understanding how to, and parents' interest in navigating this time and work-life balance or work-life integration is one of our highest performing content areas. It's one of the things that people are looking at the most. Because they both men and women want to be crushing it in the workforce. They really want to be out there, and they also want to be more present and engaged than ever at home. And there's very few places to look and go. What we've also found is that they are championing and supporting and sharing around those companies who are doing this. And I think that as we look at the opportunity ahead for those companies like Nestle and others who are sort of taking these pledges and making this kind of work happen, is how do we start to excite and engage consumers in the same way that we've done that with cause marketing around sustainability and bringing that through our products and to the shelf. Can we do the same thing around workforce and around benefits, and specifically around paid leave?
And you're shaking your head. Does that sound true to you?
Absolutely. It likes music to my ears, because it's definitely the type of environment and culture we want to continue to foster. And it's not just paid leave. It's also complementary programs that support paid leave. We have assistance with infertility, adoption assistance, special needs child adoption. We even started shipping mom's milk for female workers who travel on business. So all of that is continuing to grow from this policy here.
Yeah.
So
it's amazing what comes down the path. So that brings me to, so again, as we're recognizing this changing workforce, right, and that we're going to be in flux and continue to be in flux as we're figuring out what this looks like 10 years from now, as well as the demands that are changing for families on both sides, both parental units. What do we think next steps look like for companies going forward from here?
Go ahead.
Well, we hope that we inspire other employers to follow suit, because we want to learn. We're still learning ourselves. We want to learn. We want to test and see how we can join together, because our employees may be married to some of other employers' employees. So we want to make sure they complement benefits very nicely in order to foster that family support system, and being able to have a successful career, but also being able to have a successful family unit and parenting experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would say a number of things. One, I think we're going to continue to see sort of a paid leaves arms race. It's like the best kind ever in terms of amount of benefits and hours. The employer certainly wins there. I think we're starting to see sort of the next chapter. Okay, we've provided leave, now what? And one of the biggest challenges that are now facing working parents, because today's unit is 2 working parents, both with similar levels of career stress and focus and desire. And so the next phase of that also is about childcare. How are we going to support our workers to enable them, to provide great childcare so that they can also show up at home? So we're seeing a lot of companies start to lead in that. I think we're going to see more and more of that. And then the third area that I know is sort of part of your program as well is the expansion of paid leave beyond white-collar workers. So if there's a lot of companies out there who do provide wonderful benefits, but their benefits are only available to a portion of the population, or a portion of those people who are working with the company. And so how do we bring it to those people who are packing boxes and in the supply chain, or sweeping up, or doing all the things that make all of our companies work, because those people are actually the people who need it the most. And need that support the most. So I think we're going to see that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And will you just remind me what the percentage was of your hourly workforce, because it's pretty great.
Of our male participants in our program, 45% are hourly
workers. Yeah.
And what's inspiring about that is that those people are probably they are the first in their generation, and in their families and in their communities, to be able to take leave. And so their kids are growing up saying, my father took paid leave. Mm-hmm. Their sons are growing up that way. They're strengthening new relationships with it. I mean, you guys are doing it from a business perspective, but the societal impact of this is so significant that I don't even, we can't even begin to think about how to quantify that. So I thank you for it. It's really tremendous.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's really great. And then, kind of pivoting from, we know this is great both for business reasons and societal reasons, but what are the challenges that businesses face when they're thinking about this? Whether it's paid leave and expanding that, or whether that's, I know we've chatted a bit previously about culture, and how are you actually incentivizing the culture within the company to change so folks feel like they can take it, or now new programs like childcare, flexible scheduling, those kinds of things.
So for ours is definitely a culture and a mindset shift, and making sure that not only our employees are aware of what the benefits are that they are eligible for, but also that line managers are also supportive of this. Not just the top leadership that have the buy-in of the program, but the frontline managers who's going to have that factory worker leave for 14 to 26 weeks possibly. That's 6 months without that line person being there. And how do they plan for it? Those are some of the challenges, right? Is it overtime? Is it contract work? Is it maybe a developmental opportunity for somebody to step in during that time frame? So it's juggling all of those different options as to what meets each type of role. I mean, it could be a field salesperson, it could be a factory person, it could be a corporate person. So each one will have its own solution. And really just fostering that culture to be mindful of that, and how at the end it will, in the long run, have that employee retention. I mean, we have 87% retention of anybody who used this benefit. They come back to work 6 months later, and after they come back, 87% are still with us.
Yeah.
So
the long game there.
Yeah, and it's not only important that people take the leave, but particularly for managers and C-level and directors, is that they talk about it.
Yeah.
That they talk about that they, one of the most impactful things, I don't know how he plays in this room, but that Zuckerberg did around paid leave is, he talked about the 4 months that he was taking off, and he posted about it and wrote about it, and that impacted all the young startup founders that he was, who are influenced by him, and so many within the company. So, as those of you who are looking at this space, it's really important that you have a culture of dialogue and talking about why this is important, and make sure that your managers and directors and C-level employees are talking about it.
Put up the out of office, right?
And that is a great point, because that was one of our biggest learning, is to make sure, one, that our policy was clear enough to understand, that we provided the support, check-ins throughout the process, and focus groups as well. And we even created parent work groups, so talking about it and understanding what other employees were able to do during this time it's a fantastic way to get the word out of the benefit.
Yeah. So just before we end here, Simon, I'm wondering, you mentioned kind of the buckets of upcoming work. So coming back to this question about what are the challenges, as companies are, we really are seeing this arms race of paid leave. What are the challenges to kind of get caregiving as the next race or some other workplace supports in place?
So I think we're already seeing caregiving. We're already seeing a lot of this happen. I think the last 4 years has been, the fact that we're talking about paid leave on this stage is really amazing because this was not a topic that anybody cared about. So I do think that it will happen in the natural cycle. However, the question still remains, and this is why culture is so important, is are we adopting it, and are we adopting it, and then are we being transparent about how much report, and reporting out on, we hit the bar here and we didn't hit the bar here, and the work that you guys are doing and Just Capital is doing to look at that is really, really important.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for being here with us today, and I really look forward to see what comes next and how we continue to move the needle forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you.